Hi everyone, it's Miss Mason, reading Counting by Sevens by Holly Goldberg Sloan. Today we'll be reading chapters 29 through chapter 33. Chapter 29. A memorial service for my parents is held in a neighborhood community center on the second Saturday after the accident. Dell drives me there, and Mai and Patty come too. Kwang Ha has other plans, and I watch him head down the alley with what looks like bolt cutters in his backpack. Lenore meets us at the community center, and I see the nurse from Jameson who helped me when I hit my head. I can't look at them. I can't look at anyone. As we walk to the front doors, Mai takes my hand. It feels warm. It is colder than normal, and a sea of mostly unfamiliar faces press too close, saying some version of how sorry they are. I'm not sure that I can breathe. The air is sticking at the top and the bottom of my lungs. They put me in the front row. Workers from my dad's union organized this event, and 3 people are speakers. I do not hear a single word that they say. On an easel next to the podium is a poster-sized picture of my mom and my dad, taking back when my dad had hair and when my mom was skinny. They have their arms around each other, and they're laughing. I know this picture. It sits at an angle on my mom's bureau in a frame made from seashells. I remember when I was younger asking my mom why they were so happy in the photo, and she said because they knew that one day I was coming into their lives. It wasn't logical, but it made sense. After the service, everyone is given white balloons, and we're ushered outside. The helium-filled inflatables say Jimmy and Roberta in chunky purple letters. The idea is to release them while some guy in a suit, but also wearing sandals with white socks, sings about love being the answer to everything. I watch in horror. I know for a fact that the latex lumps will end up tangled in electrical wires. They'll find their way into rivers and streams, and even travel for miles out into the oceans, where they'll choke fish and endanger marine mammals. But I cannot find my voice to do anything about these future calamities, because it is someone's idea of inspirational to release the bobbing weapons. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a toddler refusing to let go of his helium prize. His parents finally manage to pry the ribbon from his clenched fist. As the 4-year-old sobs in agony, I know he is the only one here who understands. A small article with a postage stamp-sized photo of me is in the local paper, and a fund is started for my future education. My father's employer makes a generous contribution. There are other people on the list of donors, but they are only names I've heard in passing, not associated with faces that I would easily recognize. The only person I know is Jairo Hernandez from Mexicano Taxi Company. I write Jairo a thank you note, and he calls happy polished nails. It's 2.5 weeks after the accident. I use the stationery from here, so he took a guess that they might know where I am. Patty is surprised that a man wants to speak to me. I explain he is an old friend. He is a friend, and a lot older than me, so I'm not lying. Jairo asks how I'm doing, and then he says, I want you to call me if you need a ride somewhere. I say, thank you, I will. It's quiet for a long time, but I know he's still on the phone line. Patty is watching me, so I nod and try to look like I'm listening to more than silence. I finally say, did you enroll in school? He says, I haven't done that yet. He then asks, how is school going for you? I could just say fine, but it feels wrong, so I say, I'm taking a break from that. He says, me too. But I add, but I'm going to the library today. Maybe that's some kind of start. I hang up the phone, and later in the afternoon I ask Patty if I can go to Beale. She says yes. Once inside the building, I go upstairs and find the spot behind the donut chair. I crawl back there, but I don't sleep at first. Instead, I watch the world from this protected place. The library has regulars. A lot of them talk to themselves, but they do it quietly, because quiet is enforced here. After a long nap, I go back down to the first floor. The computer room is the most popular space in the building. I'm surprised, but a lot of people who I think might be homeless, from the amount of things they are forced to leave downstairs at the front desk, go online. I can see that they check their Facebook pages. I watch these people click through the pictures and view the same kind of videos as the bored-looking teenagers who show up when school is out. I'm not sure why this is reassuring, but it is. I go outside and sit on the steps. I'm not waiting. I'm just being. Time exists only in my mind. For someone grieving, moving forward is a challenge. Because after extreme loss, you want to go back. Maybe that's why I don't calculate anything now. I can only count in the negative space. I'm on a different planet now. I only speak when I absolutely have to. Otherwise, I do my best to be invisible and stay out of the way. No matter how hard they try, other people do not understand because I'm incapable of communication. And that is why the deepest form of pain comes out as silence. Mai, when she's not at school or with her friends, talks to me about her life. I listen, but I don't answer. I spend most of my day with Patty. She's there for me. And just being there is 99% of what matters when your world falls apart. I know for a fact that Kwang Ha hates me, but I'm okay with that. I have brought nothing positive into his life. Now he has to wait longer to use the bathroom, and the hot water in the shower runs out more quickly. I try to do everything last, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. I don't want to cause trouble, so I haven't said anything about being a vegetarian. I just push the chicken or the pork pieces off to the side, and then later transfer them to a napkin, and then at the end of the meal I sneak them into the trash. I know that I'm eating meat bits that escape this tragically simple procedure, but the principle of my decision is intact, even if the reality is compromised. All reality, I decide, is a blender, where hopes and dreams are mixed with fear and despair. Only in cartoons and fairy tales and greeting cards do endings have glitter. I somehow make it through the first month. I dress and brush my teeth when they tell me to. And I experience the hollow feeling of complete loss, which is emptiness. Meaning has been drained from my life. I force myself to think of anything but the one thing that I'm actually always thinking about, and that is so exhausting that I sleep more than I ever have. I'm a shadow. I no longer dream in color. I don't count by sevens, because in this new world, I don't count. Chapter 30. It was dark nowadays when Dell got home to the gardens of Glenwood. The only greenery in the apartment complex was in the courtyard, and that was in a circular patch of red volcanic chips that hurt Dell's feet, even when he wore thick-soled shoes and was just trying to take a shortcut to the always strange-smelling stairwell. The pumice rock minefield was dotted with stubborn weeds armed with sharp thistles, which poked up through the cheap layer of thin black plastic under the brick-colored lava bits. The thorns caught Dell's exposed, fleshy ankles and drew dots of blood. There were no natural glens in all of Bakersfield. It was a flat, dry place, which made green only by sprinkler systems. Maybe that was why so many apartment complexes around town were named for ferns and wet-wooded sanctuaries. It was an expression of the yearning of moisture-challenged climate. At least that's what Willow had told him when she had first asked where he lived, and he responded, he had to admit with puffy pride, "The Gardens of Glenwood." Now he took the stairs to his second-floor unit, because the elevator, which was required by law, never worked. Dell tried in desperation to add up the events of the long and challenging month. A week after the accident, as he had predicted, his supervisor asked to see his file on Willow Chance. Dell may have found the missing kid on the day she left Mercy Hospital, but he wasn't a hero for very long. Now, weeks later, he was afraid. He could admit that, at least to himself. He had given Willow practice exams in everything from the required 3-hour test for application to medical school to 14 of the SAT Subject 2s, and she'd aced all of them. But he made the decision not to hand those materials over. What he sent to his boss was a simple electronic form that revealed next to nothing about the girl. Somehow he'd been caught up in so many layers of deception. Willow Chance wasn't a cheater. Patty Nguyen wasn't an old family friend. The Nguyens didn't live in the Gardens of Glenwood. Why couldn't they use their own address? He didn't homeschool her, like he was supposed to do, and he had never committed to being any kind of a counselor. Willow walked from the nail salon to the district offices on Tuesdays. She was always on time. Instead of taking tests or analyzing the stock market, the two now sat in silence. Dell tried to think of things to motivate her, or at the very least ease her distress, but so far he had been a failure. Yesterday Willow had come in, and for 55 minutes, which seemed like 55 hours, Dell worked on a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of bowls of jelly beans. Willow didn't place a single piece, but he knew she wasn't trying. And he was really bad at puzzles, so it was a struggle in all ways. After she had gone, Dell opened his computer and wrote up a report. He knew now that he was being observed, and if there was one thing Dell Duke understood, it was that he didn't do well under scrutiny. He had made a mistake by ever getting involved with the genius kid, because it was a lot easier to do his job and not care about anything. And now he cared about everything. Patty Nguyen hadn't enrolled in any of the necessary classes for foster parenting, and she didn't go to the one group session that had been offered. She intended to, but somehow more than 4 weeks had passed, and she had yet to do more than check in with Lenore Cole, who was Willow's social worker. As the darkness of an autumn sky pressed in through the glass of the salon, Patty looked down at her calendar. A hearing had been set in family court, and a judge would make a determination about Willow in the next 2 months. But Patty decided that today wasn't the time to think about the future. Today was the day to order more shades of red nail polish. She found the new catalog from her most reliable supplier, and circled a shade that she thought Willow would approve of. It was called Well Red. Just doing that made Patty feel marginally better. Chapter 31. Vietnamese is spoken here. I can understand the manicurists, even the ones who talk fast. They never whisper back and forth about their customers' nails. They talk about their lives. While they file and buff and paint, I hear their stories, which are nearly all about husbands and children and other family members. Many of them are related to one another, cousins and sisters, mothers and daughters-in-law. They are a tribe. They don't know that what I hear is hurtful, because even as they complain about bad men or lazy kids, the pain for me is seeing how they are so connected to one another, to their families, and to the world. These women wrap themselves in their stories from the minute they walk through the glass door until the second they leave at the end of the day. They use words to build something that is as real as cloth, and while they complain in lower voices about one another, they are joined by blood and circumstance and shared experience. They are part of something bigger than themselves, even if they don't realize it. I do. I have seen trees that survive fire. Their bark is burned and their limbs are dead branches, but hidden under that skeleton is a force that sends a single shoot of green out into the world. Maybe if I'm lucky, that will one day happen to me, but right now I can't see it. Patty is at the front desk. Everything in here is white. The reception area, the manicure chairs, the floor. White equals clean. I'm pretty sure that with the exception of the color red, Patty would be pleased if every other shade in the world disappeared. That's how she sees things. She has schedules and rules and methods, and every day she does her best to impose these on the world, one chipped fingernail repair at a time. My mother used the old expression, there is a place for everything, and everything should be in its place. But she didn't practice it. Patty does. I would say that, with the exception of me sitting in the back of this salon, she's winning the battle. Patty is adding up something on a calculator when the phone rings. After she says hello, I hear, "Today?" I look over because now I'm an expert in her voice, and while it was even and unemotional, I still heard something different in it. The person on the other end of the phone line is doing all the talking. Patty shoots a look to the back of the salon, and our eyes connect. This must be the call where she officially gets rid of me. I hear her say, "I work until 6:30. Patty looks out the window. She's struggling now. I want to make this easy for her. I get up from my spot in the back and I fold up the furniture pad. I close my computer and I take off my glasses. I breathe deep. I know that I've been nothing but a problem. I've tried to be invisible, but just my presence here has changed the dynamic of the situation. Quang Ha was mad before, but now he's a volcano when we cross the alley at night to the garage. Mai puts on a good front, but even she seems tired of the whole arrangement. I need this to be easy for Patty. She's been good to me. So I turn to face her and I do my best to smile. I want this smile to say I'm grateful for what she's done for me. I want to say I'm sorry for being broken. I want to say I understand her situation. So I'm trying. I really, truly am. But my teeth stick to my lip and my whole mouth quivers. Patty sees my creepy grin and turns away. I hear her voice, shaky now, say, "We won't be there until 6:45. Is that too late?" Patty hangs up and right away dials a number. Her even disposition is one of her best qualities, and she's maintaining it, sort of. Maybe that happens when you've been through a lot. All your edges are worn off, like sea glass. Either that or you shatter. Bakersfield is 130 miles from the Pacific Ocean, but twice I drive to the beach, just outside of Santa Maria, with my parents. There was a short period of time when I was obsessed with the study of the ocean, since it takes up more than 70% of the planet. But on the 2 times that we went to visit, I was afraid. The unpredictable current and the vast complex system of wildlife that resides beneath the churning water gives me hives, literally. I was a body of bumps. So I admire Patty's composure. I know that my time here wouldn't last long, and today is the proof. I find myself always waiting for bad news now, so it's almost a relief to get some. I walk to the front counter. I hear Patty saying, "A woman called from Child Services. They're doing a home visitation. Today." Once I'm close, she shoots me a look and then hits a button, and suddenly Dell Duke's voice is on speakerphone. "Well, it's pretty obvious you don't live at my place." Patty only shrugs and says, "It's temporary." He says, "Why did we use my address? What's wrong with where you live?" Patty ignores the question. She says, "Let's start by taking a look at your apartment." I hear Dell slamming something, his fist into a file cabinet, his head onto his desk. "I can't just leave. I'd have to take a sick day or—" Patty hits the speakerphone release button, and Dell's voice is cut off. She then says, "Come get us. We'll be here, waiting." She puts the receiver back into the cradle and returns to her work. She says again, to no one in particular, "Temporary." Chapter 32. It isn't long before Dell's Ford swerves into the parking lot. He gets out of his car as if his hair was on fire. I should be freaking out like Dell, but I find myself mimicking Patty's attitude. My edges are gone. I'm sea glass. If you look hard, you can see right through me. There isn't much discussion. Patty and I get into Dell's car and we drive across town. 10 minutes later, we arrive at 257 Heptad Lane. I look up at the apartment house. It appears to be a building constructed by a blind contractor who didn't use an architect. The proportions of the place are all off and not in a provocative way. It looks as if someone took an enormous box, painted it the color of Serratia marcescens, which is a rod-shaped pink bacterium that grows in showers, and cut holes in the sides. I'm somehow not surprised that Dell Duke lives here. We follow the counselor up a dark stairwell to the second floor, where he opens a door. He's mumbling now. "I wasn't expecting company. I'm not prepared for visitors. I need to put a few things away." He then quickly shoots like a trained hamster through the crazy maze of stuff. We hear a door shut in an unseen hallway. I wonder what he needs to hide, because there is enough here in his living room that should mortify him. Dell Duke is obviously one of those people who have issues throwing things away. Maybe he doesn't have full-blown disposophobia, which is hoarding, but he's on the same playing field. The old me would have taken a lot of pleasure in a first-hand look at such a complex emotional condition, but not now. Patty and I stand in the entry and stare at the stacks of newspapers, magazines, and mail surrounding the discount lawn furniture, which I decide is the exact color of a white rabbit's eyes. Pink with a drop of yellow mixed in. The complete patio set, called Masculine Salmon, on a manufacturer's tag sticking out from one of the cheap metal chairs, has cut distinct circles in the wall-to-wall carpeting. I step deeper into the room, so that Patty can close the door, and I find myself next to an outdoor umbrella still encased in cloudy plastic. It's propped up against the wall. I feel its sadness. I trail behind Patty down a narrow path to the kitchen. Towers of sloppily rinsed microwave trays are on most of the counters. Off to the side, I see teetering columns of red disposable cups. I realize that I have not had great exposure to other people's ways of living. I had never seen the kind of garage setup that the Nuyens have going, and looking at this place, I understand that there are clearly whole lifestyles that have been kept from me. Dell Duke is charting a different course. If this is what he has in the open, I'm now curious to look in one of his closets. Patty must have had the same thought, because she moves out of the kitchen, through the clutter of the living room, back to the tight hallway. I follow. but with some caution. This looks like the kind of place where an unexpected exotic animal might appear. The illegal kind that people buy on a whim in the back rooms of pet stores, but then later set free in an alley because they can't control the razor-sharp claws or the eating demands. The door to the first bedroom is closed, but that doesn't stop Patty from turning the knob and opening it. We both now see Dell stuffing an oily-looking sleeping bag into a nylon sack, but there are no dead bodies or anything. At least not in plain sight. It's just a super messy room. Comic books and magazines are strewn next to the bed, which doesn't have sheets or a mattress pad. The necks of empty wine bottles poke out of a metal garbage can, the sort that should be outside in the corner. It only takes an instant for Patty to find the handle on the closet door. Dell shouts, "No!" But it's too late. Patty has opened the louvered door to reveal a wall of underwear. There are hundreds of them. I used to enjoy estimating quantities, but not anymore. I know with certainty that in the past this would have really interested me. Patty steps back as Dell sputters, I'm behind on the laundry." This is truly an understatement. Patty looks from Dell to the underwear and then to me. It seems obvious that there's no way it could ever appear that Patty and her kids live in this apartment. But I'm wrong. I'm not sure what flipped her switch, but maybe it's the size of the challenge. We're back in Dell's dusty Ford, now heading, under Patty's direction, to the Salvation Army on Ming Street. Minutes later, we all stand at the front counter of the second-hand store. Patty has picked out a red Formica table with 4 nondescript dining chairs, a stuffed lemon-colored sofa, and a leather lounger that swivels in a complete circle. She has the tags for a metal-frame bunk bed with mattresses that appears to have one time belonged to a military enthusiast. Worn Semper Fi stickers cover most of the railings. It isn't until Dell's credit card is out that he has the courage to ask, "How are we going to get all this stuff back to my place?" Patty, without explanation, heads straight out the glass door to the sidewalk, leaving Dell to complete the transaction. Dell and I find her standing outside at the curb next to a truck that says, "We Haul." The 2 men who get out to help us are named Esteban and Luis. They have well-developed packing skills. It doesn't take them long until they have all the furniture tied down in the back of the very worn-looking pickup. Upon arrival at the Gardens of Glenwood, the 2 men carry everything up the flight of stairs to Dell's apartment, without even breaking a sweat. Patty supervises. Dell stays out of the way. I am the silent observer. Now all we have to do is get rid of his junk. Patty thrusts a detailed list into Dell's hands and orders him to the market. Once he is gone, she positions me with Luis and Esteban in a line where we form a human chain. There are only 4 of us, but using this ancient means of transport, months of trash leaves the building. Dell returns 2 hours later, and most of his stuff is now in the building dumpsters. He says it was his plan to take it to the recycling center, but I know he's lying. He doesn't seem upset that we got rid of the things, so I guess he's not a hoarder. He just has trouble with follow-through. Chapter 33. Mai stayed after school on Fridays to participate in a program for at-risk teens. They didn't call them that, though. They called them special enrichment students, but of course she knew. Mai had read the pamphlet describing the funding for the project. It was on the desk of the team leader the day of the first meeting, so she wasn't really snooping or anything. She was curious what they thought she was at risk for. Once a week, a dozen chosen kids met at the school library to discuss anything, from setting your sights on college to the importance of getting your teeth cleaned. Today a woman was talking about eating green vegetables and doing extracurricular activities to build a resume. When she finished, they were all given little tickets. At the end of the program, they could turn them in for prizes or something. The team leader wasn't clear on that. Mai loaded her backpack with new books from the school library and walked to the bus stop. Most of the kids who weren't at risk had their own cars to drive home or parents who picked them up. So maybe, Mai thought, the risk part involved riding the city bus. The bus shelter in front of the school had a flower bed with the toughest roses in Bakersfield. Or at least that's what Mai thought as she stared at the thorny bushes. One of the few things that Willow had said in the last month was that everything in life could be seen in a garden. According to her, if a plant was in decent soil and had sun and enough water, a bud would at some point show up. It would start small and be very green. Sometimes bugs ate holes in the exterior of the bud, but if they didn't get too deep into the thing, it would bloom. and the world would see the flower. With time, the outer petals would start to wrinkle, beginning at the tips. The shape couldn't hold, and the whole thing would open up big and then sloppy. The rose was now more affected by the wind or rain or even the hot sun. The petals would finally just dry up and break away, falling to the ground. That left only a round bulb, which was the skull of the thing, and in time, that would finally drop as well, returning to the soil. There was as much of a lesson in that, Willow had explained, as in anything she'd been told by anyone about life or death or the stages in between. What was the rose before it was a rose? It was the soil and the sky and the rain and the sun. And where was the rose once it was gone? It returned, Mai figured, back to the larger whole that surrounds us all. No one ever picked up Quang Ha from school, so when Dell Duke's car screeched to a stop right at his feet, he was alarmed. The smudged window slid down and Dell shouted, "Hey!" The boy could feel his whole body tense. You don't say, "Hey!" to someone named Ha. And then Dell shouted, "Get in! We're on a tight schedule!" Quang Ha didn't budge. "What's going on?" Dell reached across and opened the car door. "Ask your mother. She's running this scam." Dell didn't explain much, just that Patty and Willow were at his apartment fixing it up to make it look like they lived there. It all seemed pretty shady to Quang Ha. But he called his mother on her cell, and she told him to load up the cooking stuff from their garage. He was supposed to take blankets and sheets and bathroom things, too. He was pretty sure it was the dumbest idea in the world, but he crossed the alley and took the sweaty counselor with him. For over a month, Quang Ha had been sleeping in the same room with a complete stranger. Maybe someone was finally going to do something about that. Dell stood in the doorway of the garage and stared. No wonder they had used his address. This place didn't even look legal. Dell had assumed they lived in a house, or at least a real apartment, so this was a shocker. Where did that woman get all of her attitude? After he and the lone wolf, who might actually be an oddball, had placed a rice cooker, a bamboo steamer, a wok, half a dozen bowls, tongs, a collection of chopsticks, 2 meat cleavers, 3 cooking pots, and the bedding into Dell's trunk, they filled an old milk crate with food. Then they grabbed some stuff from the bathroom in the salon and were back on the road. It felt to Quang Ha like some kind of prison break. By the time they swung into the dusty carport of the Gardens of Glenwood, he was even more on board with the whole plan. It seemed obvious that they were going around the law, or at least defying some rule or regulation, and that was exciting. Chapter 33. Mai stayed after school on Fridays to participate in a program for at-risk teens. They didn't call them that, though. They called them special enrichment students, but of course she knew. Mai had read the pamphlet describing the funding for the project. It was on the desk of the team leader the day of the first meeting, so she wasn't really snooping or anything. She was curious what they thought she was at risk for. Once a week, a dozen chosen kids met at the school library to discuss anything, from setting your sights on college to the importance of getting your teeth cleaned. Today a woman was talking about eating green vegetables and doing extracurricular activities to build a resume. When she finished, they were all given little tickets. At the end of the program, they could turn them in for prizes or something. The team leader wasn't clear on that. Mai loaded her backpack with new books from the school library and walked to the bus stop. Most of the kids who weren't at risk had their own cars to drive home or parents who picked them up. So maybe, Mai thought, the risk part involved riding the city bus. The bus shelter in front of the school had a flower bed with the toughest roses in Bakersfield. Or at least that's what Mai thought as she stared at the thorny bushes. One of the few things that Willow had said in the last month was that everything in life could be seen in a garden. According to her, if a plant was in decent soil and had sun and enough water, a bud would at some point show up. It would start small and be very green. Sometimes bugs ate holes in the exterior of the bud, but if they didn't get too deep into the thing, it would bloom, and the world would see the flower. With time, the outer petals would start to wrinkle, beginning at the tips. The shape couldn't hold, and the whole thing would open up big and then sloppy. The rose was now more affected by the wind or rain or even the hot sun. The petals would finally just dry up and break away, falling to the ground. That left only a round bulb, which was the skull of the thing, and in time, that would finally drop as well, returning to the soil. There was as much of a lesson in that, Willow had explained, as in anything she'd been told by anyone about life or death or the stages in between. What was a rose before it was a rose? It was the soil and the sky and the rain and the sun. And where was the rose once it was gone? It returned, Mai figured, back to the larger whole that surrounds us all. No one ever picked up Kwang Ha from school, so when Dell Du's car screeched to a stop right at his feet, he was alarmed. The smudged window slid down and Dell shouted, "Hey!" The boy could feel his whole body tense. You don't say "hey" to someone named Ha. And then Dell shouted, "Get in! We're on a tight schedule!" Kwang Ha didn't budge. "What's going on?" Dell reached across and opened the car door. "Ask your mother. She's running this scam." Dell didn't explain much, just that Patty and Willow were at his apartment fixing it up to make it look like they lived there. It all seemed pretty shady to Kwang Ha. But he called his mother on her cell, and she told him to load up the cooking stuff from their garage. He was supposed to take blankets and sheets and bathroom things, too. He was pretty sure it was the dumbest idea in the world, but he crossed the alley and took the sweaty counselor with him. For over a month, Kwang Ha had been sleeping in the same room with a complete stranger. Maybe someone was finally going to do something about that. Dell stood in the doorway of the garage and stared. No wonder they had used his address. This place didn't even look legal. Dell had assumed they lived in a house, or at least a real apartment, so this was a shocker. Where did that woman get all of her attitude? After he and the lone wolf, who might actually be an oddball, had placed a rice cooker, a bamboo steamer, a wok, half a dozen bowls, tongs, a collection of chopsticks, 2 meat cleavers, 3 cooking pots, and the bedding into Dell's trunk, they filled an old milk crate with food. Then they grabbed some stuff from the bathroom in the salon and were back on the road. It felt to Kwang Ha like some kind of prison break. By the time they swung into the dusty carport of the Gardens of Glenwood, he was even more on board with the whole plan. It seemed obvious that they were going around the law, or at least defying some rule or regulation, and that was exciting.